Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. I haven't done one of these in a month or so, and it's a series that I call Treasure or Trash. It's a series that I enjoy. I hope you do too. What it is I choose an album by a band that I love, and this album is pretty much universally trashed by the critics and by most fans. So I kind of go back into it and say, what do we think about it? Do you think it is trash, or do you think there's some treasure in there as well? Today, we're going to talk about this album by The Who called Endless Wire. Now, this is a pretty famous album for me because I don't think any album's ever made me so angry. Forget about the Queen videos now. This album made me so angry when it came out. And if you look in the background, I actually did a Who ranking the albums about 2 years ago. It's a pretty good video, but it's horrendous quality. I tried to film in the basement where the archives are, and it didn't come out good. But the content's pretty good. And I ranked the albums. I'm not going to tell you where this falls, but you'll have to watch the video. But you can imagine. Anyway, let's talk about Endless Wire. But before we do that, you definitely have to put it into some context. So let's go back to 1978. The Who's last album with Keith Moon, Who Are You? There's Keith on the cover, not to be taken away. Ironically, he passed away tragically, really sad, back in September, I think it was, of 78. He was trying to get himself actually clean, and I don't know, took something like 30 pills, and he did die. So that was back in September of 78. What people don't seem to remember is that Mooney was in really bad shape at then. On this album, by the way, he almost got fired. And if you look at the tracks, he's basically not on this album, except for the classic title track, Who Are You, which is really the Who sound. The rest of the album, he's really not there. And the year before, in 77, the band couldn't tour because he was in such bad physical shape. Townsend has actually been quoted as saying, even if Moon survived, he probably wouldn't last it in the band. 79, the next year, they recruit in Kenny Jones, a fine drummer, but a completely different drummer than Keith Moon. He is what you call a timekeeper. He plays the time. The fills are what you call your typical fills. And back in 79, when he joined, the band were red hot. They were doing the Quadrophenia movie and soundtrack, and the Kids Are Alright documentary, and the band was really huge. And I went to see them on that 79 tour. They were awesome. Kenny Jones was great. The band was on fire. It's a great tour. They eventually released Face Dances, the first album with Kenny Jones. This one comes out in 81, and it's pretty good. I kind of like this album. I don't think it's classic, but there's a lot of strong stuff on here. You Better You Bet still gets played. It's probably in the top 5 of most played Who songs, I would bet, on commercial radio. 2 years later, 81, they released It's Hard. I didn't think it was nearly as good, but it's still a pretty good album. Entwistle's all over this in a good way, and it's got Eminence Front, which is pretty much to me like a Townsend solo track, but it's one of my favorite tracks by The Who. So that's 81. But by then, Daltrey is really sick to death of Kenny Jones' style of drumming. He can't stand that kind of typical drum patterns. He wants him out, and they get him out, and it's pretty much the end of the band. In 82, they announced their farewell tour to play Shea Stadium. The Clash opens up, and Who is supposedly history, except for 7 years later when they return in 1989. With the big band sound, and they tour for 25th anniversary, 1980 and 980 U.S. tour. They released this monster box set, this big Who band, and Townsend's playing acoustic largely. Who's the drummer? None other than Simon Phillips, one of the all-time great session drummers. The guy's a monster, but funnily enough, just doesn't sound good with the Who. It's not a good recording, not a good live sound. And it just goes to show you, sometimes you need to be more than a great drummer to fit in with the band. Simon Phillips doesn't really work with the band. It's pretty much it with the band. Then they keep reforming, touring, no new releases. They finally get their perfect replacement in 1996 with Zach Starkey, Ringo Starr's son, who is a monster drummer. He is a perfect combination of Keith Moon and also Kenny Jones. He plays on the beat, but he could play around the beat like Keith Moon. and the band is really rolling, and everything's great until 2002 when John Entwistle passes away. Unfortunately, the day before the tour starts in the United States, they don't miss a beat, The Who. A couple nights later, they're back on tour with Pino Palladino, a legendary great bassist, but whether purposely or not, he does not even try to replicate Entwistle's monster Who sound. That's where we leave off. The Who has not released a studio record since '82. Gets us to 2006. 24 years later, they release Endless Wire. I am so excited because Zach Starkey had been playing with the band. He's a phenomenal drummer. Pino Palladino is a great bass player. And I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And then I buy the album. And like The Who does, they like to release multiple versions. This is the one that I got with the bonus live DVD. But there's a lot of versions of this album. So there's the credit right there. And if you look, it says Zach Starkey on drums, right? Oh, no, that's on the DVD. But it's there. It's in there. Give me a second. It says the principal performers are Zach Starkey. Well, till you listen to the damn album. So kind of misleading. There it is. There it is. Principal musicians. Zach Starkey on the drums. But apparently, if you really listen to the album, he's only on one song. And that's the killer of this whole album. So let's go through it, shall we? A little bit song by song. It's really two albums in one. It starts off with the Endless Wire part of it, Fragments, which tries to sucker you in because it opens up with the synthesizer riff from Baba O'Reilly. And then the band comes in, and are we breathing in? Are we breathing out? And there's a spoken word part, and it's not a great Daltrey vocal. I don't think his vocals are great anywhere on this album, really. And Townsend, I think, is on drums on this, or he programs the drums, because even the guest drum is not on all of it. And there's the problem. The album just sounds like Townsend in the studio with a million overdubs, and you got Daltrey to sing, and even Townsend's playing the drums, and it's just very muted. I do not like the production. It's produced by Peter Townsend, but it just sounds like a studio recording. Goes into the second song, A Man in a Purple Dress, which I really like, but it doesn't sound like The Who. It sounds like a really powerful Townsend solo record. And the lyrics are amazing because back then Townsend was going through a really rough time. He had gotten arrested for looking at child pornography on the internet. He said he was doing research, and the only one of the few people who stood by him was Roger Daltrey at that time, and he was really grateful. And this is a song, Man in a Purple Dress, where he just lambasts the religious people, the priests, and things like that. How dare they judge him, these hypocrites in a purple dress. And he doesn't pull it, he's not afraid to pull punches there. And he really is defending himself. Pretty powerful song, and it's just Daltrey singing Townsend's words to an acoustic guitar. Pretty good stuff. Mike Post's theme is next. It comes in with a big opening, goes into the song, but the problem with the album, it sounds manufactured. It's a studio creation. It doesn't sound like the band. This is The Who. The Who's like the most powerful rock band, and you're coming back as The Who. Even these albums with Kenny Jones, it's a different sound with Kenny Jones as a timekeeper, but it still sounds like the band. This does not sound like a band, and that's the problem with this album. In the Ethic comes next. That is... I thought it was Louis Armstrong singing. It's literally a painful vocal performance by Roger Daltrey. It's just him singing like Louis Armstrong, kind of, to a piano ballad. It's so different, and it's so damn awful that you would torture me by making me listen to the song. Then you get Black Widow's Eyes. That's one of the better tracks, and it's the only track on here that's actually got Zach Starkey playing the drums. But again, they don't sound like they're playing together. It's got this muted production. It's very flat. It just never takes off. And that's the problem with this album. It's The Who. It's supposed to be The Who, and it just doesn't sound like that. Then it goes into 2,000 Years, an acoustic track. Townsend, I believe, is playing mandolin. It sounds like some banjo. There's some string section that Townsend put together, and it's a nice, okay song. God Speaks of Marty Roberts. Well, that's another acoustic one, and I like that. It's got Townsend solo. He's singing and playing the guitar, but it just sounds like it would be a fine Townsend solo song. Does it need to be on this album? Where it never sounds like The Who, and then you got these acoustic Townsend things that are okay. What's next? Not Enough. Well, that was a frustrating one because Not Enough to me is the best song on the album and really could have been a great song. It's catchy, it's got a hook, it's not enough, but again, the same flat production. It just sounds like they're in a studio sending tapes to each other and trying to build it up, but it just doesn't have any electricity. It just doesn't really take off. And then You Stand By Me, another acoustic guitar ballad by Townsend. Really nice song, thanking somebody for standing by him through these really rough times he was going through. I'm assuming he's talking about his girlfriend Rachel Fuller. Maybe he's talking to Daltrey too. I don't know. Then you go into this Sound and Glass A mini opera. And I got a big problem with it because as you could see, they're fragments. Instead of full-blown Who songs, they're just little fragments that really don't go anywhere. Sound Round is the beginning. It's got a big drum intro that comes in. The guy playing the drums, what's his name? Hamilton, I think it is. I could look on here. Just so unimpressive. Just muted and just so low in the mix. It just doesn't sound like The Who. And that's what this whole rock opera is, just so muted and just so nothing with nothing. Sound round, feel the ground. Then it goes to Pick Up the Peace, which is a terrible song. Just a terrible song. It just sounds bad. Then what do you got? Unholy Trinity. Do I remember that one? Is that the one that's got some banjo on there? And a lousy Daltrey vocal, if I remember right. Trilby's Piano. Well, that's a piano song where Pete Townsend starts singing, Hi Me, Hi Me. Sounds like a bad Broadway show song. From there, you go into the title track, Endless Wire, which is actually the second best song on the album. It's a really fine song, but you only get a minute 51 of it because it's part of this pseudo mini opera. And it's just, again, it's the same issue. It's a studio recording. The production's lousy, but there's a good song buried in there. Fragments of Fragments is exactly what it says. It goes back to the beginning of the album from Fragments. Are we breathing in? Are we breathing out? Ugh. And then We Got a Hit, which is really, We Got a Hit. No, you don't. It's definitely not a hit. I'm surprised that you would even see that on a Who album, but I guess it's part of this mini opera. It's just kind of an okay song. And again, it's a fragment, so it never gets a chance to take off. They Made My Dream Come True. It's just it's Townsend singing, but he sounds really tired. It just is okay. Again, a minute 12. Mirador, that was a weird one because it opens up with this big, huge audience like they're at Madison Square Garden, and they just name check a whole bunch of celebrities going to the Mirador. It's a rocker, but it just, again, never really takes off. It's just flat and unexciting as the rest of this album is. And then it ends with Tea in Theater, which, if you saw The Who at that time when they were touring after this album, they would end the shows with that. This kind of delicate kind of a track where they're looking in their eyes with love, how Townsend and Daltrey have survived as they sit and have tea at the theater. It's actually not a bad song. It's okay. I like this version of the album because it's got 2 bonus tracks where you get a full version of We Got a Hit and Endless Wire. Especially Endless Wire is a really good track. And instead of a minute 51, you get 3:03, so you get a full song. We Got a Hit is better also because you get the full song. So there you go. So why was I so angry? Because in 2006, I waited, without exaggeration, 24 years. Now, 24 years back in 2006 was a lifetime for the Who to get back together. They had been playing with Zach Starkey. They have the perfect drummer. And he's not even on the album because apparently he was booked up with Oasis at the time. Well, you know what? If you waited 24 years, you could have waited 25 years or even 26 years to put out a real Who album instead of this bastardized Who where Townsend in his studio, almost like Queen, he's a master of the studio. We're going to put overdubs in. And then I'm going to fly the tapes out to Daltrey to sing his part, and his vocals are not anything with anything, and the album's just flat and unexciting, and just not much in the way of really good songs either. So, as a huge, huge Who fan, this is my least favorite Who album. If you watch my ranking the albums, Face Dances and It's Hard to me are far superior. They would come back later on, many years later, with the Who album, which I had to buy 2 of that you see there, which is a better album than Endless Wire. But I also had issues with that album because it, again, was clearly a studio creation and it sounds like it. It's flat. And The Who, perhaps the most exciting rock and roll band of all time, if you're going to go out as The Who instead of Daltrey and Townsend, then you should make a Who album. And if you make a fan wait 24 years and you're going to put out a Who album, make it sound like The Who, and you didn't. So that was my big disappointment. Let me know what you think. So Treasure or Trash? For me, well, I have to have everything by The Who because I'm a fan, but it's trash for sure. Let me know what you think. I'd love to know. Thanks for watching. That's subscribing. Thanks for checking out my videos. Hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you on my next video, and have a great night.